Let's talk about Batman. More specifically, I want to get into the topic of why does it seem like Batman is getting mistreated at WB as of late?
This needs to stop!
Now, spoilers for anything that has had Batman in it for the last 20 years. If you're somehow not familiar with Batman at this point, Batman is one of DC's staple characters. One of the big three, the others being Superman and Wonder Woman. Batman's origin is that of a kid, one night, going into the city of Gotham City, that is, watching either a movie or a play, depending on which adaptation we're talking about. After that play or movie, deciding to cut through an alley, and his parents unfortunately meet their demise. From then, Bruce Wayne trains for the rest of his life to become the ultimate vigilante known as Batman. And there you go, that's Batman. But I'm noticing an interesting trend as of late. It's kind of funny to look at this nowadays and be like, well, how could he be mistreated? He's one of the biggest characters, and not to mention, he had a new movie come out which was pretty successful and really well liked. The thing is, though, when it comes to movies, he's been portrayed pretty good. But when it comes to everything else, it's either been hit or miss. If you're not familiar with the show Gotham, I wanted to touch lightly upon that right now. It started in 2014, lasted 5 seasons, and it's about James Gordon. And it's just a cop show, pretty much. It's a cop show about him dealing with villain of the week type stuff. Certain villains appeared in Batman comics, but I think they made up a couple along the way. But the point is, this is where I started to notice a little bit of a trend of having Batman-related content without Batman. Now, yes, you do have Bruce Wayne as a kid in this show, and there are certain elements to him becoming Batman later on. Him slowly trying to train that persona, and him developing new skills along the way. But a lot of his important villains kind of show up pretty early and get really established right off the bat, pun intended. Now, the thing about Batman is that the city Gotham ironically creates Batman, while Batman can be seen as someone who creates his own villains, inspiring those to come up and try to either outsmart him or try to face him head on. But with the show, it kind of leaned towards more of what villain can we show next. Like, you have people like Bane, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, and a proto-Joker who they couldn't really name due to DC rights. So he's just known as either Jerome or Jeremiah. 2 separate characters who act like the Joker. Now, Gotham ran for 5 seasons and is somewhat looked upon, I'd say mixed. I mean, I see a lot of people still defending it to this day, saying it's a good show, it's a good watch. Me personally, I got through the first season and I couldn't sit through the rest. It was pretty boring for me.
What the hell is this? For crying out loud, somebody throw a pie!
The only episodes I would watch are with certain villains. I wanted to see the Scarecrow origin, I wanted to see the Scarecrow in action, Mr. Freeze, and obviously the show-stealing Cameron Monaghan as Jerome or Jeremiah. You do see Batman show up at one point in the final episode, sort of like a Smallville type thing. You know, he finally shows up. You do see him in his bat suit, but it's not that great. But for what it is, he does show up, and it kind of just seems like, you know, they tried. They tried their best to do a show about Gotham, set it as early as they can before Batman could show up, and try to do something a little bit interesting, a little bit different. But it just kind of seems like, it just kind of seems sloppy in execution sometimes. Certain characters will either get mishandled, aged up, or just look terrible, to be honest with you. Mr. Freeze's design just, it looks awful. It looks very awful. Scarecrow looks great, and the handling of Poison Ivy was just super weird.
What the fuck?
After that, there'd be another show, Batman related, that comes out next. And that show is Alfred. For some reason, we have a show about Alfred. Just let that sink in for a minute. Is it still ongoing? Let's see. Hold on. Let's see if it's still ongoing. No, it stopped. The show was called Pennyworth and it lasted 3 seasons, which I'm pretty amazed by. A whole show based upon the origins of Batman's butler. You do have Thomas Wayne showing up in the show, but it just sort of, like, is it really necessary? And Krypton did the same thing where it's like Superman's great grandfather, I believe, but again, it's not really needed. I haven't seen it myself. It just doesn't look interesting. You know what I mean? Like, again, a spy espionage show set in the 60s, sure, cool, but it just seems generic. And you're slapping Alfred Pennyworth in the show. It doesn't help. If it was like about Bruce Wayne in the 60s as a spy espionage, then maybe. But no, not for me. Thank you. The next show I want to talk about is Batwoman. Now, this one kind of had an interesting premise. Batwoman was going to be primarily set in the CW universe, or the Arrowverse of superheroes. That included The Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and so on and so forth. So for us, we were like, okay, I guess that means Batman's going to appear in the Arrowverse. But guess what? He just vanished. He's missing. We focus on the titular character of Batwoman, aka Kate Kane, the cousin of Batman, or Bruce Wayne for that matter. Now, that's interesting enough, but it just kind of seems like the way they initially went about it, especially in a couple teasers that were released before the show came out, it kind of, I don't know, pushed a gender narrative first instead of telling a good story.
I need you to fix his suit.
The suit is literal perfection.
It will be. When it fits a woman.
You're a female Bruce Wayne.
Awesome. Hilarious. Handsome. I'm not about to let a man take credit for a woman's work.
It's fine that if you want certain legacy characters to take up the mantle of Batman, it's totally fine, especially if you want it to be a female. But there's certain ways you can go about it. You try to go in a spiteful way, you're going to get negative reactions every single time. I don't mind a show where someone takes up the mantle of Batman. It's fine. Those can make for really interesting characters, like Terry McGinnis, who actually kind of shares the same sort of looking costume as Kate Kane. Weird. But the way they went about this is just totally wrong. Saying that the role or the suit looked better on a woman, or it would be better on a woman, or something like that. And it's just the wrong way to go about this thing. And again, it's set on the CW, which unfortunately, it's not what people were expecting. And it got pretty boring pretty quickly. Bruce Wayne does appear in a dream sequence, and he does appear as one of the identities that Hush takes over. But again, it's not really that interesting at all. Later on, Ruby Rose would drop the role entirely and would be replaced by another character, Ryan Wilder. Which, for me, you might as well cancel the show. I mean, there's just no point now. It's just a random picking up the mantle. Which, again, it's fine, but you're kind of already just making it worse at that point. I mean, I don't mind the character of Ryan Wilder, but it just made things worse for the community that liked Batman at this point and were starved for Batman content. It didn't work out. It just didn't work out in the way they wanted it to. It only lasted 3 seasons. But are you starting to notice something? There's somewhat of a pattern going on here. I want to talk about a couple more things before we move on to the main point here. Then of March 2023, we got the premiere of Gotham Knights, the television series. And I think you all know how that turned out. It was terrible. It was awful. It's a CW show, so like, what do you expect? You know, a lot of these shows, especially like The Flash or Arrow, were pretty cheesy at some points. But this, it was just awful. Like, they just disrespect Bruce Wayne so heavily in this show. He's just killed off, like, not even in a really cool way.
Look at this shit! Look at this shit!
This show had literally nothing to do with the game Gotham Knights, which got announced before this show and was based upon it, apparently. But it's just, again, it's just not great. It's just not well executed at all. And we're stuck with a bunch of characters that you really don't root for or care for. Or if you do, hey, kudos. And there's no mention of Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Barbara Gordon. There's no Bat family that we know in sight besides Carrie Kelly and Stephanie Brown. But everybody else is just either made up or just a nobody from the comics. Sure, you got Two-Face's origin in the show, but does it matter? Why didn't Batman fight him? Like, I get they're trying to tell a different story. But at the same time, though, it's just not interesting enough to carry it. It's just not interesting enough. It's just not interesting enough at all. It lasted one season, kudos, and either due to the big shakeup at DC at the moment, it got canceled, and no one's gonna miss it at all. Like, really, no one. And the only people gonna miss it, people that were either that bored or starved for Batman content. And even then, you got enough right now. Gotham Knights the game. If you know, you know at this point. It wasn't well liked. It just died quickly. It's a pretty clunky game, and it had a lot of potential, honestly. It really did. It had a lot of story potential. It had a lot of gameplay potential. It had a lot of potential. It had everything going for it, and especially playing characters like Red Hood, Nightwing, Batgirl, and even Robin. And it just seemed like you couldn't fail. But they did. They did somehow. And you got this golden ticket opportunity to tell a really interesting story. And also have really interesting and dynamic gameplay with all these characters. And you somehow messed it up again. You somehow messed it up. But whatever. If the game centers around Batman dying and the Bat family taking up his place in Gotham and trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, even figuring out what really happened to Batman. Again, we got somewhat of a pattern here. Let's talk about one more thing. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Again, another game that had everything going for it. I was pretty interested in a Suicide Squad game for a while now. But the thing is, the execution, again, wasn't done the best. But spoilers for that game. Batman, the one we've been playing as and throughout the whole Arkham trilogy, plus Arkham Origins, he dies. He gets shot in the head by Harley Quinn, defeated by the Suicide Squad, and some people had a negative reaction to it.
Hey, little man, how's it going?
I kind of remain neutral on it. It's disappointing, but at the same time, it's pretty much been confirmed that he's coming back, or he's back, or he's alive. Whatever. It's just they can bring him back easily. They can say that it was a clone, or they could say that it was from a different universe. They're gonna retcon it. It's fine. It just brings me to my whole point here. It seems like WB has a rights issue, or just is sick of Batman at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I felt like there was a while there where I thought Batman was being overused a little bit too much. But at the same time, though, this doesn't really mean that you have to get rid of this character in so many ways in certain media. You can tell interesting stories where Batman is either retired or he's dead, and you can well execute it. The thing is, though, a lot of these stories just don't stick the landing at all. And you wouldn't think it would be that hard to stick the landing. It's Batman. Any Batman story is well liked, and even the ones that are not, at least have some interesting ideas. I mean, take for instance The Dark Knight Returns. It's a very stylized version of Batman at that time, being old, rugged, referring as everything as a war or everybody's a soldier. It was a little weird. It was brutal as all hell, but that's what made it stick out. It's fine. You could tell stories like this, but we've been getting almost the same story outside of the movies. Either Batman retires, or he's missing, or he's dead.
Over and over and over and over and over and over.
Okay, Clay, I get the point.
No, you don't!
And we follow a bunch of characters that are not well liked, or characters that we do like, but they don't go anywhere with it, or they're too scared to do anything with it, or they're characters we just don't care about, or just don't want to see. But the bottom line is just, why put money and effort into casting, building sets, and wasting everybody's time on a project just for it to crash and burn when you know for a fact that it's not going to work? For me, I don't think you can really hold on to Batman like this. Batman is a good character. You know what kind of character he is. Everybody likes Batman. He's pretty popular. But the problem is, it's just you keep doing these stories about him that just don't work. They don't work in your favor. We don't like seeing our heroes get disrespected. And it seems like for the last couple of years, behind the scenes that are not movies, Batman has been disrespected a lot. And it's just kind of weird to see this happen. The same thing is happening with Sony and Spider-Man. They keep producing supervillain movies without Spider-Man, even though these characters are directly related to Spider-Man and can't really work without him. Besides Venom. You can tell interesting Red Hood stories. You can tell interesting Nightwing stories. You can tell interesting Batgirl stories. You can tell interesting Batwoman stories. You can tell interesting Robin stories. The thing is, though, it shouldn't be this hard. And we don't need shows primarily based upon just Alfred in the beginning stages, or just James Gordon and him dealing with Batman's villains without Batman. Like, a TV show based upon Gotham City with James Gordon is fine on its own. It's fine. It's fine. Set it in a stylistic version of Gotham. Make it realistic. Make it a neo-noir kind of thing. But when you put all these flashy villains in this show where it should be just serious, not having Batman is going to hurt it. A young James Gordon show does work. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's just having the element of those villains kind of hurts it. At least for me. Like, sure, you can have people like the Riddler. You can have people like a proto-Joker work. But you have villains like Clayface or a version of Man-Bat or whatever they did with Killer Croc. Even if, I don't know if he showed up in that show. It kind of seems like he did. It just kind of seems like you run through all his villains. And by the time he gets there, like, okay, James Gordon's been dealing with this for like years. It's fine. He's got it. There's no need for Batman. Or the constant killing of Batman to prop up other characters just for those characters to crash and burn. And don't get me started on Titans and regarding Batman and what they did with him and Jason Todd. It's just awful. It's not even worth mentioning. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sick of just Batman being used as a character that just has to prop up everybody. It's just like the MCU Hulk. Being propped up to promote other characters or make them seem cool or badass by saying, oh yeah, we defeated Batman this way. It's just, who cares? Tell an interesting story. That's why we love the Arkham Batman games. That's why we love the Batman animated series. That's your main thing that you should do. Flesh out a story first. Don't do anything that's gimmicky. You do gimmicks and people are just going to catch on. Bottom line is, tell an interesting story first. If you want to tell a story about Batman and how he got defeated or the night Batman died, you can do it. But so far, if this is all you got, you might as well stop with these projects. Don't get me wrong, Batman's not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, he's going to enter the public domain in 2035, so that would be cool. But as it stands, just stop. We don't need these types of stories being pushed at us. As it is, we know what we want. And we don't want to see our favorite characters get disrespected like this. Now, I know they're just fictional characters. And WB has all the rights to do whatever they want with Batman and his characters. And we all have to kind of respect that. And we all just have to accept that. At the end of the day, I'm not going to watch a show based upon characters I don't like or characters I don't find interesting. And a lot of these have those types of characters. Characters I don't care about. Characters that I don't know. And even when I do watch enough of them, 30 hours of them, they're still not interesting. Make a good show first. Come up with an interesting premise, sure. Shock me, okay, that's fine. But this is not what I want. I don't know about you. But thank you for watching. I love you.